So overall, as I stated earlier, it'd be a cap and trade system which would be optimal for the Gulf countries to institute, and even the Gulf businesses, foreign and also indigenous businesses, are also relatively support a cap and trade system as well. There was a 2007 poll that was undertaken by the Middle East Economic Digest that found 88% of businesses in the Gulf actually support the introduction of a cap and trade model. And the Gulf-based businesses and industrial groups tend to promote a cap and trade system simply because it offers significant opportunities for emission reductions in a multitude of carbon-intensive sectors, and it also encourages technological innovation as well in so-called uncapped sectors, which are sectors which are not held to any type of carbon limitation. And it would benefit these sectors primarily through the spread, or the general spread of technology and best practices that would percolate throughout the economic system. So because of this, the Gulf countries, out of all the systems I listed previously, most of the Gulf businesses support the introduction of a cap and trade regime. Now, to take off where the Gulf countries left in 2007, where they scrapped most of their plans to institute a carbon trading mechanism, what I did was I engaged in quite significant research during my time in the Gulf in order to formulate what would be the optimal system for the Gulf countries that would encourage technological innovation for their industrial sectors, encourage energy efficiency, and at the same time it would allow significant financial benefit to accrue to the businesses that engage in carbon emission reductions. So, in developing a carbon trading mechanism in the Gulf, the GCC countries do not need to reinvent the wheel. Simply put, because there is a wealth of experience to be garnered from the EU experiment in carbon mitigation, as well as the North American experiment in reducing sulfur emissions as well, the so-called acid rain program instituted by the EPA. So one of the most important lessons that may be gleaned from the EU ETS is that there is a need for verified and accurate emissions data. This is necessary because if you have verified and accurate emissions data, then this is how you construct your benchmark or your baseline. And one of the issues which caused the EU ETS Phase 1, the European Union system, the carbon emissions trading system, to collapse was simply because there was not any type of credible data on carbon emissions, and they had extremely optimistic forecasts for the increase in carbon emissions. So as a result, they over-allocated carbon permits to the power utilities, which passed on the cost to the end consumers, and also the utilities, what they did was they simply pocketed this difference. So they were, because of the initial allocation, which was brought us in the EU ETS, they still passed on the cost to the end consumer, and they pocketed the difference, which equaled billions of euros, which was a significant amount, and which caused a sense of outrage in the EU. So this is an issue that the Gulf would really have to be cognizant of. But I can't stress it enough. Benchmark, benchmark, benchmark. This has to be done. There has to be a credible benchmark in order to create any type of carbon emissions trading system, so that you'd be able to efficiently allocate allowances and permits to the industrial sector. So ideally, a Gulf trading platform should be created in 3 phases. So there should be a phased introduction of the system. Now, what this would do, a phased introduction, is that it would allow adequate time for the various industrial sectors to acclimate themselves to the new carbon constrained reality. So if we consider a phase 1, so to speak, of the Gulf system, is it would essentially be gratis, and not only that, it would be for a period of time, much longer than the EU ETS, which lasted for about 2 years. In my formulation, it would last about 5 years, and what it would do is it would be a type of learning by doing period whereby the regulators would get up to speed quite quickly during this time. The industrial sector as well will become used to incorporating carbon prices as well in the future business plans, which is quite an important issue. So if we look at the phase 1, which would be voluntary and also be gratis as well, so we not unduly discriminate against Gulf industrialization and Gulf businesses. And then if we also look at phase 2 that would occur after that, and again, I would say that there should be a minimum period of at least 5 to 7 years where the provided phase 2 will last. And then this would also allow a gradual tightening of the carbon caps as well. And it would also encourage technological adaptation and innovation at the same time. So when phase 3 is thereafter launched, it would also allow the Gulf economic and industrial sectors to understand how this trading platform works, and then the Gulf regulators would also be able to insert or to construct much more ambitious targets later on down the line. So to mitigate also the threat of carbon leakage, which I spoke about earlier, which is quite an issue in the U.S., is that what the Gulf countries should do is that there should be a multilateral implementation of the Gulf emissions, carbon emissions trading mechanism. So what I mean by that is that it shouldn't be unilateral. Because if it's unilateral, if it's done by one country, if we take, for example, Kuwait or the UAE, then these countries will simply fear that they are undertaking all of the burden of cutting back on their emissions, while fear is ever present that their energy-intensive industries will simply flee to a neighboring country which has fundamentally the same pricing for natural gas, the same electricity pricing, similar legal structure, and so on. So if it's done nearly simultaneously, then I think that this would address many of these issues. So there should be little fear as well that there would be economic harm if the Gulf countries do implement carbon emissions and mitigation regulations. Because even if there is a carbon scheme implemented in the Gulf, the GCC would still be extremely attractive for international investors, given the region's enormous energy reserves, its low labor costs, its minimal taxation regime, and also its central location at the geographical crossroads of Europe, Africa, and Asia. So all these factors simply make the Gulf unbeatable for many of the downstream hydrocarbon industries, petrochemical development, fertilizers, and steel smelting, and so on. So these competitive advantages will still continue to attract FDI and to encourage countries to continue onward with their modernization programs. And lastly, with some of the research that I've undertaken at the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, quite recently, I've delved into detailed forecasting for what the Gulf energy sectors are going to look like until 2020. And even under the most optimistic scenario, it is going to be an extremely rough road ahead. Basically what I forecast is that there are going to be significant power shortages, natural gas shortages up until 2020 if something radical is actually not done. And many of the Gulf countries, with the exception of Qatar, are going to be major natural gas importers as well. So one of the ways that carbon emissions restriction will address this issue of this lack of energy efficiency is that it would formulate a type of Darwinistic environment whereby the Gulf industrial sectors are going to have to become energy efficient, and at the same time it would allow them to do so in such a way that they would be able to obtain a type of financial benefit for doing that. So I think that this would actually be much more productive than a simple fiat or dictate that a particular industry has to undertake as some type of energy efficiency program. This would allow themselves to be able to acclimate to the new carbon reality, and it would also allow the Gulf countries to preserve their natural resources for future generations while still bringing in additional revenue streams for the future. So thank you very much for your attention.